Welcome to the Heal, Thrive, Dream podcast, where trauma survivors become healthy thrivers. Each month, we'll feature a theme in the trauma recovery and empowerment field. To promote your recovery, healing, and learning how to build dreams, here's your host, Karen Robinson, transformational coach and therapist.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Heal, Thrive, Dream podcast. Today, our guest is Ms. Andrea Johnson. And Andrea is a women's empowerment coach. She's a leadership expert. She's a speaker and a podcaster. So thank you, Andrea, for being here today. What did I miss?
Oh, no, you got it. I'm thrilled to be here, Karen. Thank you.
Yeah, we're thrilled to have you. So tell us a little bit about not only your work, but how and why did you pick this career path that you're on?
You know, I think the best career paths pick us. And I don't know that if you had told me 20 years ago that I would be a women's empowerment coach, a podcaster, a speaker, running a membership community, helping other women figure out exactly what their voice is and how to grow themselves in order to build their businesses, I would not have believed you because I was kind of stuck in the corporate world. I had a very general understanding, a very traditional understanding of how things worked. And I kind of made my personality fit all of that. And it wasn't until my mother was diagnosed with breast cancer back in 2003 that things started I started questioning things. I started asking, well, why do I think this? And why do I feel this way? And what if I want to be different? And it was 2005 when I said, I need to make a change in my own life. I weighed 310 pounds and I knew that was I worked for an oncology center. I worked in cancer research and that's a very high indicator for cancer. And my mother's was hormone-related breast cancer. So I said, I have to do something. So I had gastric bypass surgery, which is not in itself, it's not a magic pill, but if you don't do personal growth work and figure out how you got there, you will get back there. And I'm 17 years out. I'm definitely a victor in this area. Mm-hmm. And even my surgeon at the time said, I think you might be one of our poster children for this particular surgery because you have to really want to make changes. And that kind of started me on a big personal growth journey. I discovered not long after that, I was in early menopause. So I ended up going through a private adoption. And so I have one son who is now 13. And so I'm an older mom. But all of these things brought me to the realization that there's more to life than just following whatever road somebody lays out for you in society and says, this is what you need to do. And when my mother died in 2017, lost her battle to breast cancer, it was a bit like being put in a crucible. And that was when I said, you know what? Why do I believe what I believe? Why do I think what I think? Why am I doing what I do? And I came out with a philosophy of personal growth. And that's when I realized, wait a minute, there are ways to help people that do not include being an employee for somebody else. And someone introduced me to the idea of coaching. And I said, well, what's that? And I realized it's what I'd been doing for 20 years as a manager and as an administrator. And so that's when I started that journey. And here I am today.
Wow. I know you saw my eyes get big on the video, right?
Sure.
And so for the podcast listeners, you just would never have guessed that she was once over 300 pounds. She nowhere near that. You probably lost two people.
At least a grown man. I went from 310 to, my lowest was 116. Right now I'm right in the 128 to 130. Mm-hmm. My goal this year is to become strong. So it's not just to become thin. So that's a whole new health journey. But people look at me and say, how did you do that? Well, it takes a lot of dedication and perseverance and consistency. Mm-hmm. It's the same with any other kind of growth and change. But if you follow me on Facebook, if you friend me or anything, you'll see all my old pictures. They're out there.
Wow. What that shows people is that you put in the hard work. You don't just
absolutely
talk about it.
Yes.
Yeah. I find that very empowering. So good for you. That's awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah. And I know it's just a piece of your story. It's not the whole story. Yeah. So What was your relationship like with your mom, and how does she inspire the work that you're doing?
Well, in many ways, it was a typical mother-daughter relationship. There were
So
plenty
easy.
of, it's like, we're not going to talk about this subject. No, there, I had a different personality than the rest of my family. And I'm very opinionated and outspoken and kind of strong. And my mother was a very bubbly, she's like a bottle of champagne. She was this lovely Southern lady from Southeast Texas. And she wanted very much for me to live the life that I could. And most parents will do what we can do as we can do it, right? It's like we work with what we've got. And early on, there was a lot of her trying to make me, or at least I felt like her, right? And so we butted heads a lot in that area. But by the time she watched a lot of my own personal growth, and the piece I left out for you was when I was 20, I put myself in the hospital for bulimia and depression for 12 weeks. So that was the precursor to my hitting 310 pounds. Was I had an eating disorder from the time I was 10. But by the time she was diagnosed with cancer, she was starting to say, wait a minute, my daughter's making some major changes. I love her. Let me see what's going on. And there was never a lack of curiosity from my mom. That's one of the things that I learned from her. There was this quiet strength to her that even in a male-dominated world, my parents were missionaries in Korea, and my mother went to work for volunteer-wise for the Red Cross, and she attained the GS version of a colonel, I think. And so she had a lot of power, but she wielded it in ways that many women now would recognize as, oh, look what you did. But at the time
GS
it was
15.
Yeah, it was not. Okay, so she was a 13. So you must know GS numbers. She was a GS 13. So what is that, a major? Something like that.
High ranking. Yeah.
It was high ranking. She flew VIPs up to the DMZ in Korea and all kinds of stuff. But she was a project manager for building townhomes. But when they came back to the States, she went to work as an administrative assistant. Something about being in that environment gave her the ability to stand up and be who she could be. But coming back to that world here in the United States, she couldn't. And she took administrative assistant jobs that she finally retired from one. And I think she found some fulfillment in her work, but I watched her become smaller, and I didn't want to do that to myself. And I went through times where I was angry that she became so small. I'm like, you could do so many bigger things. But by the time, the end got closer, she really wanted to make sure that she said everything she could say, that she did everything that she could do. She learned how to express her joy in ways that I've never been able to understand or duplicate or replicate. And that's inspirational to me.
Yeah.
So to watch someone grapple with what it's like to be at the end of your life and to face that with courage and joy and constantly share with other people your courage and joy is something that you can't unsee at all. So
that was a beautiful tribute to her.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Really. She was a beautiful lady.
And so the other thing that intrigued me when you were talking is you're an adoptive mom. I am as well.
Excellent.
So we have that in common. And how would you say becoming an adoptive mom empowered you as well?
Oh, I just got cold chills. It is both one of the hardest experiences. Well, more than both. It is one of the hardest, one of the most humbling, and one of the most empowering, because in the matter of 24 hours, I became a mother. One day I was not.
Labor and delivery, right?
One day I was not, and the next day I was. And it's just, I can't grasp it sometimes, but to think, and we did a private adoption. And so we still keep in touch loosely with the birth mother. And because it was a private adoption, we met her at Panera Bread, and she had already signed all the papers. And I asked my lawyer, what do we do? And he said, well, y'all just meet wherever you want, right? Because custody wise, she's already signed the papers. The judge, he's yours. Okay. So I called my mom and I said, because at the time we were in Baltimore and they were in Richmond. And I said, I think I'm getting a baby tomorrow and I seriously don't know what to do. You need to come up here. I was 43 and I was working at Johns Hopkins in the oncology center. And I told them I was in a big clinical trial research meeting that day. And I said, I need y'all to know I'm going to be out tomorrow for maternity leave.
And they're like, yeah, buddy.
No, they all, because it had been a 12-month, practically 12-month journey. We'd been through several birth mother situations, but to meet her at Panera and to have my mom pick up this 9-week-old 14-pound baby, let me tell you, and say, oh, he's beautiful. Well, I don't know. Right? This is my only baby. Babies look like babies to me. And she said, he's beautiful. Look at this baby. And to have her say to me, what do you want to name him? And we had already talked about it. As an adoptive mom, it's just like any other expected baby. You pick out names and all that kind of stuff. His name, she named him Nathan, which means gift. Well, we had never even looked at the name Nathan. And so when she said, what are you going to name him? We had already decided, you already named him. He is our gift. His name is Nathan. And that was the only time she even showed a crack in her armor. And to watch this 18-year-old girl hand over her flesh and blood to me, trust the future of this person to me and my husband.
Huge. It's so huge.
I watched her walk out and thought, that is the bravest person I've ever known in my life.
Yeah, now you're giving me chills.
But and everybody's story is a little different. If you go through foster adopt, that's different. If you go through agency adopt, that's different. Or international, we have plenty of friends who've done that. And while I was a missionary kid in Korea, we were involved in some international adoption, helping with fostering children. But there is this beauty to someone allowing you to become a parent through, in quote unquote, unwanted pregnancy or whatever. It's in itself, it could have been a trauma that caused that. And it could have been traumatic for him to stay with her. And she said, I'm picking better. Right. I'm picking something better. And to be chosen is, I don't have the words. Still, 13 years later, I don't have the words. So
my adopted baby, she's 12 now.
Oh, right on the same timeline. Yeah. It was yours. What was yours? Foster, private, or?
Actually, very complicated. None of those. She was born in Japan.
Okay.
Her mom and dad were Marines.
Okay.
So she was American born overseas. And so she's multicultural though, but not Asian. Uh-huh. And she's just beautiful. Her name's Grace. Sure. Her name's Grace.
Oh, perfect. That was a girl's name if we had gotten a girl, because that was my grandmother's name.
My grandmother's too. Yeah.
Well, and here's another piece for you, Karen. My sister's name is Karen. So we have a lot of things in common here. That's beautiful. I love that.
Yeah. So I think having an adopted child and teaching about empowerment, it's like, and when did your mom pass away from breast cancer? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
He was 8 and he remembers it. And he was her youngest grandchild by a good bit. My sister's oldest daughter, who now has the first great grandbaby, was 14, I think, when we got him, 13 or 14. And they look so much alike that people thought she was his mom. Oh, wow. Yeah. But my mother called him her sugar cookie and just poured into him, as much as she could. Yeah.
Very cool. Yeah. All right. So we get to know a lot about your personal life. Thanks for being so vulnerable and sharing, because that helps so many people when we're, I think you mentioned earlier, authentic when we're talking privately. So yeah. How has your personal life impacted your ability to be a coach? How has it blossomed your career?
So as a teacher, we teach the things that we know. As a coach, a lot of times you can be taught the skills and the dynamics to actually coach someone through something. This is how you hold your hand on the tennis racket to hit it more accurately. This is, you're turning your foot out this way when you run down the track. But if that coach has never run down the track, if that coach has never hit a tennis ball, there is a limitation to what that coach can do. Right. So the more, as a life coach or an empowerment coach, the more I learn and the more I grow, the more experience I have from which to teach. I saw a social media post this morning about a woman who said she didn't understand this coach who said she keeps her private life private and her coaching life separate. She said, how do you compartmentalize that? If you're teaching people how to do what you've done, if you've not had a transformation, you can't teach a transformation.
That's right.
So that's how the stories that I have changed. They've changed me. And the growth that I have achieved is a result of what I have been through. And so I don't usually drop all my stories in. I share them on my podcast. I share them on my social media. So when I sit down with a client, either in a group setting or a one-on-one setting, I'm able to listen in a different way. I'm able to be more curious and able to be more generous and help them to see their stories and how they can grow. And they look at me and say, even if it's, for health reasons, how did you get where you got? How do you stay healthy? And I have experience to share from that. I think it's that way for any type of coach.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Share with us more, if you don't mind, about your healing journey, like from the losses you've had or the hard times. How did you heal from that?
Well, I think as we grow, we need to understand that we are whole beings. We are, you can say body, mind, and spirit, or body, mind, soul, and spirit, however you want to describe it. Mm-hmm. And for me, it has been a journey of emotional healing, a journey of physical healing and spiritual healing, and definitely mental healing. But I mentioned when my mother died, I went into this, it's very deep grief when you lose someone very close to you. It doesn't matter how much you're prepared for it. She was in hospice for 9 months. I was there every weekend, but the moment, there's no preparing you for that loss. And grief for me became not just a crucible, but a little bit of a catalyst to say, okay, now you've experienced one of the worst things you've ever experienced in your life. What can you do with it? How can it be a tool that you can grow with? My healing journey has not been linear. Many times it's a loop-de-loop, right?
Wait, has anybody's been linear? What does that look like?
So it's never linear. And there will be times where it's layer upon layer or a stripping of layer off. Mm-hmm. My most recent work has been in the area of my own fears of what people will think of me when they realize I may not align with them politically any longer, or that maybe I'm theologically a little bit different than them. And because I come out of a very strong evangelical world, and, there's a movement in that world of breaking out of certain things. And I'm kind of one of those people, but, just being able to deal with and sit with the fears and understanding my strengths helps me see them. And my most recent work has literally been to understand that I have to feel all the feelings in order to open up. And I've known that. It's part of one of my tenets of intentional optimism is I got to feel all the feels. Mm-hmm. But experiencing that to understand that opens up the channel for all of my strategic thinking ability and my logic that I love. That's all blocked off if I'm not feeling my emotions. And so healing from past hurts of things people have said. Nobody wants to hear not everybody wants to hear your opinion, Andrea, or you wouldn't understand, little lady, or here's a good one for you. Your husband we're going to ask that they fire your husband, and it's all because of you. Because I'm a pastor's wife. So we hear things, but those hurts can sit with you for a really long time, even when you think you've let them go, and they inform a lot of your ideas. But being willing to open those back up and air them out and just get it all off. And it's hard work. I've hit my knees weeping.
Yes.
And I have had almost a 2-year span of time where I just didn't communicate a lot with some of the people that were closest to me because I just wasn't ready. So part of that healing has been creating some good boundaries and then learning how to let some of those boundaries down now that the healing is taking place. And I think those are all really good practices that we can use even for, I explained to you, as the world sees it, I've not been through big trauma. I've not been through big T trauma. But if I don't have a place or a shelf to put any of the things that I've been through that are hurts, those still work in my life as trauma. So I've had to learn how to deal with those and be able to walk through them and past them and say, okay, now I can breathe again. So.
Now, thank you for sharing that. One of my thoughts was when you talked about your spouse possibly getting fired, it meant that you were stirring up movements. And sometimes that scares people.
Well, I wish that was what it was. I think a lot of it was they just didn't understand my loud personality. But at the same time, it could be movement.
I'm pretty sure because you can't really, it's possible, but it's very difficult for a meek, mild-mannered woman to make movement.
True.
It happens, but it's very kind of slow. So I think in order to do what you're doing, you have to be opinionated. You have to have personality.
Right.
You have to be engaging.
Yep.
And it's not that meek, mild pastor's wife that some people are accustomed to.
So my
I have
husband
a lot of pastors' wives in my counseling practice.
Do you? Yeah. Yeah. It can be a very rough life. And I've been through, that's another thing to share is I've had psychotherapy. I've been in counseling. I've had some fabulous counseling. That's what got me through a lot of my stuff. And being willing to get that, being willing to say, I need some help. These are things that are hard to deal with. And so my husband took a sabbatic for about 2.5, 3, maybe 4 years. And when he went back into the pastorate, I said, you need to understand, I'm not that person anymore. And he goes, good. He said, you don't need to comply with anybody else. You and God, you're good. And me, we're good. And so there's been a freedom in the newest work that he's been doing to just let me be who I am. And that also brings healing.
Sounds like he's got some intelligence going on too.
He's a pretty good guy.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So tell us a little more about your women's empowerment coaching. What does that look like? What do you do for women?
So I have, as I said, my philosophy and personal growth plan of intentional optimism. It has 6 tenets, and it is basically attitudes and thought processes that we espouse and we live by. Most of them are very similar to other personal growth plans. It just is the one that works for me. But when I work with women, especially in my membership community, which is called Launch from the Beach, and I grew up, again, in Korea on the West Coast. We had a beach, and I would spend my summers there. And it was the most welcoming and authentic community that I have ever experienced. And I wanted to recreate that. And so everything I do is beach oriented. If you look at my brand, it's all very pineapple and flamingo. But I just had a conversation this morning with a new client who's joining, and she is to the place where she is ready to make some major changes. She's hit this. I know what I'm not. I'm not sure where I'm going. How do I start? And I said, it's a little bit like you've brought all your pieces and parts onto the beach. And what we've created is a safe harbor. It's calm. It's a community of like-minded women where we lift each other up and we help each other build our dreams, our boats, our lives, whatever it is. If you come in needing to just become a little bit more yourself, or to become yourself so that you can and be true to yourself and build boundaries so that you can build a business. Or if it's a business you've got and you really want help with that, it's a community that helps you get whatever boat you need in the water, because if it's sitting on the beach, it's not doing what it's supposed to do. And so the goal is to help you find your voice. If it's a public message, if it's a private message, whatever it is to help you find your voice and to be able to live in true freedom of being authentic with yourself. So that's kind of what we do in there. It's based on rhythms and goal setting and the light structure and what we call gentle accountability. You set your goals. We ask you how you're doing. And then we have milestones, or what I call like buoys along the way, where you can check in and say, do I need to go that way or this way? And it's just really exciting to watch women learn how to build themselves up and build their own confidence by setting goals that they can achieve. It's a very exciting little community.
It sounds wonderful.
Yeah.
Now, is it a virtual community, or do you all meet in person?
No, it actually is online. So it's on a platform called Mighty Networks, which is, yeah. So if for anybody who's not familiar, it's a little bit like Facebook without all the distractions. Right. So I do video postings, and there's a place in there for teaching. We have Zoom meetings at least twice a month. I'm getting ready to add in some group coaching calls in between those, but one is a goal setting meeting and the other one is a status like gathering, saying, how are we doing, and cheering each other on. We do some, we do some fun, like free activities where we invite people in. We did a vision board workshop, and which was a lot of fun, which is this last week. One of our members said, I did this thing happened. And another one said, wait a minute, that was on your vision board. So being able to celebrate each other is really exciting. So we do have Zoom meetings, but there's a place in there for you to keep like a journal log. And I have all of my courses are in there. I have a Discovering Your Core Values course, a What is Intentional Optimism course. So it's kind of jam-packed with all kinds of different ways for you to interact and figure out what works for you. And then, of course, I offer individual coaching as well on an as-needed basis.
Oh, sounds beautiful. I also have a platform on Mighty Networks. I love it. Yeah.
It's great.
Yeah. It's really, really good for group coaching. Okay. What else would you like to share about what you do and what you bring to women? Do you have it or maybe I should phrase it this way, like when you work with women who are really struggling, like for whatever reason, if it's a bad marriage or they had a troublesome childhood, anything different about your approach with them and your individual work?
Yes, in the sense that when you work with an individual client or individually with a client, even if it's in a group setting, the goal is to see things from their perspective and to help them see things from a new perspective. So when I work with someone who is struggling, just as you gave an example, in their marriage, being able to just gently ask questions and help them see things, and then offer support of this is, it's always a safe place. This is never a space of judgment. It's always a space of curiosity. And when you are curious with other people, they can get curious about themselves, which then gives them the opportunity to step away from some of their own initial thoughts or ideas and be able to say, all right, I can see this differently. How am I going to look at this differently? And that is always the goal. It can take 3 times as long, but it's still the goal. And we always move at the client's pace every single time.
Awesome. Yeah. It's good to let them do the pacing.
Yeah.
And also have choices.
Oh, yeah.
That's really helpful.
Even just presenting choices and helping them identify what those choices are. Mm-hmm. That is empowering, right? That automatically puts the power into their hands to say, what are your choices? This, and this. And then they can say, oh, I didn't realize. I thought I was in a corner, and they're not. And then the light bulbs start coming on. Then they start saying, oh, I can do this. Mm-hmm. And it's just really beautiful to watch.
Yeah, good. So one of the questions I love asking my listeners, I'm a big book nerd. Are there any favorite books that kind of inspired you on your journey, or any books that you recommend?
Can I show it? Yeah, it's right here.
Yeah.
This one I have read 4 times. I have taught it 3 times. Oh. I even have, it's Atomic Habits by James Clear. If you follow me on social media, you will notice I quote him a lot. I think everything we do, from our thoughts to our emotions to our eating habits, the way we talk with people, the way we talk to ourselves, everything we do comes down to some kind of a habit. And the way he breaks it down into little bitty pieces makes it so understandable. Mm-hmm. And so for me, this is the book I always start with. This is the one I recommend first.
Yeah.
And it is fabulous fabulous good stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. It's probably going to be a classic, right? At some point.
I think so. And if you don't want to read the whole book, you can get on his mailing list. I'm not an affiliate or anything, but he only sends out one email every Thursday, and it's 5 things. And it's like 2 or 3 things from him. And then he quotes other people, and then he asks you a journaling question. And
I do get his emails. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's so timely. And, there may be one Thursday I'm like, yeah, nothing on there for me. Delete. But most of the time it's like, oh, I'm so glad I got this one today. And that's just a really easy way to get a little of his content.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a great suggestion, because building habits and habit stacking helps us with all the areas of our life.
Absolutely.
So that's great.
I use it even with my 13-year-old ADHD son. So he even says, I'm habit stacking, Mom. I'm like, yes, you are. Let's go.
Do you have a second book? Or am I pushing your luck?
No, you're not pushing your luck. I have a lot. I just finally read this year Mindset by Carol Dweck. I've been quoting her for a really long time, and I finally said, I should stop quoting her and actually read her. So I read that one in January, and it really did kind of put everything into perspective of how mindset really does make a difference. Mm-hmm. And so it helped me to kind of go down deeper into my own and see where I was. So those 2 books I think are really good foundational pieces for any kind of personal growth journey.
Yeah, I like that recommendation as well. I bet you found it's helped with parenting too.
Absolutely.
Growth mindset. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's where, you talk about growth mindset a lot. We talk about it all the time, but do we really know what it is? And now it's like, oh, now I really know what it is. Now I can say I've read the book. Yeah. Yeah, it's a good one.
Oh, thank you for that.
Sure.
So any women listening who would love to get to know you, work with you further, how would they go about finding you?
My Facebook is really easy, Andrea Johnson, and The Intentional Optimist is my handle just about everywhere. LinkedIn, I'm on TikTok now, Instagram, Facebook. I have a Facebook group. It's called The Intentional Optimist, where it's a little bit like a kind of a farm team for my community. So I do have guest speakers in there. And so we have some guides it's really good stuff. But on my website, you can contact me, and I offer free 30-minute consultations for anybody who is interested in like a strategy session or maybe working with me in any way. I do have a podcast myself. So it's on all the different platforms, the Intentional Optimists, Unconventional Leaders. So there's a lot of ways to find me, and I respond to DMs as well, or messaging. So feel free to reach out.
Wow. Thank you so much.
Sure.
Very rich, lots of options for women wanting to reach you and working with you. And thank you for what you do.
Thank you. It is my privilege and my honor. I cannot say that enough.
All right. All right. Well, thank you for being on our show today.
Thanks, Karen.
Thank you for listening in today. Please join us next week, same day and time. Also, I would love for you to check out my website, healthrivedream.com.